unusual. This is a Trabant T601, but not just any Trabant T601. This is a Tramp, just like the lady. And then you know it's a Tramp because it ain't got a roof. Now this car, this incredible car, is currently for sale at Stone Cold Classics. So do check out their website because frankly, it won't be there for long. Now, if you've been wondering how I was going to top that Lada Samara the other day, so was I. Well, now I know. Right, so back to the beginning, the Trabant story. Now, every country has its own people's car. We had the Mini after the Austin 7. The West Germans had the Beetle. The French had the 2CV. Czechoslovakia had the Skoda, and in East Germany they had this. The T601 was launched in 1964. It was only intended to run for less than a decade, but being a communist country of the old school, behind the Iron Curtain, it stayed in production for a very long time, all the way in fact to 1991, almost 30 years unchanged. And the thing was, for most of that time, we in the West had no idea about it. It was not on our radar at all. Because, you know, stuff from East Germany just didn't really cross the wall. It wasn't until 1989 when the Berlin Wall fell and U2 jumped on that bandwagon with the Achtung Baby album cover, where they commissioned an artist to go and decorate several of these, and they used these things as the lighting rigs for the Zoo TV tour. That these things really became the symbol of East Germany. The car that was seen crossing through the fallen wall into the West for the first time was one of these. Let's stop and take a quick look around the outside of it because frankly it's fascinating. Right, so, well, we can climb through. It's a flat floor, so we can climb straight out of either side, even though it's left-hand drive. Now, this is a really fun, proper beach buggy style of thing. Now, you might be looking at this thinking, that's a lot like a VW thing, isn't it? Or a Mini Moke. If you hadn't been, I hope you are now. But like the Moke, which is based on the basic Mini floor pans and turned into a weird kind of army thing, and very much like the Volkswagen people's car, which did exactly the same thing with the Kubelwagen, these Germans did precisely the same thing and called it the Trabant Kubel. I guess because they're both speaking German, it kind of worked with the same word. And that happened in 1966, and so there were lots of these dark green painted Trabant Kubels running around in the East German army. But then in 1978 they wanted to do a fun, exciting, reviving the 601 as an exciting proposition, so they brought out this. They demilitarized version of the Kubel called the Tramp, obviously. The main difference between the Kubel and the Tramp, apart from the colour, is the Kubel had an extra heater, so you could sit there at the checkpoint for hours on end running your petrol heater without running the actual engine. Apart from that, pretty much the same. The Kubel had more soldiers and guns in it, I imagine, as well. This is a bit more peace and love. But now we're outside, we can look at the design a little bit more, and it really is a fabulous, fabulous design. When it first came out, it was lauded as a really exciting, innovative, interesting looking car, and it was a nice piece of design. It was nicely proportioned. It was very much in the fashion of the day, the vogue for the separate wings, the curvy bonnet, the nice trapezoidal roof. Everything looked really, really good. It suffered though in the same way that things like the Metro did, in that back when it was new and cutting edge and exciting, but it just ran too long. So the 601 was revealed in 1963, it was launched to the public in 1964, but the designers and the makers only planned to sell it until 1971. It was never going to be an out-of-date design. They did come up with plans for the 602, the 603, but the DDR, the East German government, they vetoed it. They said no, they didn't want the extra expense, they didn't want people being put out by a new model, just general communist stuff. So they kept on making the same thing right the way through. Very few changes indeed. Basically, they're minimal. It's trim pretty much. 12 volts at one point. That's the exciting news. But what is exciting, and what is really needs to be put to bed right away, is the fact that this is not a cardboard car. When Achtung Baby came out after the fall of the Berlin Wall, these things came streaming through from East Germany, and suddenly it was fun and exciting to have a terrible East German car, and the joke was it was made of pressed cardboard. And that's wrong on two levels. First of all, it was never made of pressed cardboard. Secondly, this product is incredible, and mostly it's made of metal anyway. The pressed something people are talking about is not the entire car. Mostly, this thing's made of metal. Only the front wings and the bonnet are made of a plastic-like substance called Duraplast, which is a resin, a composite resin, which is actually in the same family of products as Bakelite and Formica, Formica being the wonder product of the 1960s. And I'll tangent off at this point. The most interesting thing I've ever heard on the radio was a 1-hour programme by Wayne Hemingway, the designer, talking about Formica on Radio 4. If I could find that again, I would be so happy. Random but brilliant show. Anyway, this stuff is basically a Formica front end on the car. It doesn't rust, it's strong, it's deformable, it's brilliant. It's the perfect front end for a vehicle, and with this basic tubular front bumper, if you do get into a minor prang, it doesn't matter because you're going to be able to bend the car back into shape, no problem. And with getting spare parts in Eastern Europe, that was an issue, so there you go, perfect. So let's talk about the Tramp itself a little bit. We've got the same front end exactly as the regular 601 Saloon or Estate. The rear wings are a little bit different because we've got this flat panel with what looks like a kink in it. It's a bend, a very sharp bend, and this drop out where the doors should be. But don't worry, we have security. So no one's falling out of this thing. We're all good. And of course, I love the fact that this is East German communist beige. Perfect. So, looking under the bonnet, there are a number of small, interesting things to note. First of all, our petrol tank is here under the bonnet, so let's not crash. Secondly, you've got this big grille on the front of the car, big pressed metal grille. In actual fact, there is only one little small round outlet or inlet into the engine bay itself, and a second long tube which goes direct to the air intake for the engine. The rest of it is just purely for decoration. So a shockingly small amount of ventilation coming through. Thirdly, like on a 2CV or Renault 4 or indeed a Saab 9506, we've got our gear selector running across the top of the engine here to the top of the gearbox where it does its selecty gubbins. And third, or fourth, well, I'm up to four now I guess, we've got this interesting cover, leatherette, over the engine for luxury purposes, so you really can't see anything apart from the two spark plugs because it is a two-cylinder 594.5cc air-cooled two-stroke engine making 26 horsepower and 54 newton meters of torque, and I've just put my finger in paste. Also, while we're here, just revel in an 8,000 mile engine bay which looks like it's been at the factory about 6 months. This is just astonishing. Now, these tail lights are extremely cool, but because it's coming to the UK and they've had to be kind of westernised to a certain extent, we've added, or they have added, a reversing light on the left, and on the right hand side a fog light, because that is the law over here. And you can see some of the history. 1991, this thing went back into the continent to the 1991 24 Hour of Le Mans. And it also has these hilariously small 13-inch wheels, which are incredibly still on East German tyres from the 1990s. What's more amazing is the fact that these are still in astonishingly good condition. They're not cracked and they don't feel too hard either. Right, so let's look around the cabin. I won't show you the door cards or any of the door furniture because, well, there isn't any. We've just got a little catch here to clip your safety chain into. Climb aboard, slide under the steering wheel, and you are in the car as much as you're going to be. And it's a very, very simple, basic dashboard. Elements of it look quite 1970s Volkswagen-y, to be honest. Bear in mind, this is a 1990 car. This is one of the very, very last 10 air-cooled cars, and they only produced these cars at all for a couple of years more after this. So this is as late and as modern as it gets in one of these things. And the first thing you might have noticed is, as I mentioned earlier, flat floor. We do have a kind of a cardboardy carpet which has got a rubber mat over it. I don't know if that's factory or not, but there's also stippled rubber down by the footwells. This is the back of the wheel arches intruding into the cabin, and that does mean that the pedals are massively offset. My accelerator pedal is in fact in front of the handbrake, and the brake is in line with the edge of the driver's seat, and the clutch is in line with the centre of the driver's seat. Again, like with the fuel tank, let's not crash. So, in terms of equipment, we have got a modest dashboard, which actually looks incredibly narrow now I'm sat here, which has got an ashtray in the top of it because that's important in East Germany in the 1980s. We have got a speedometer going up to 120 kilometers per hour. And next to that, we've got a fuel gauge because that's handy. And then we've got a little pad with the S logo next to it and a grab handle for the passenger, which actually feels more substantial than you might imagine from a single thin piece of pressed plastic. Next to that, we do have a couple of switches. I'm not sure what the round button there is. Hazard lights, fog lights, horn. Wow, that's a pop and a half. That's a pop that's demolishing walls wherever it comes by, whether they're East German or not. Next to that, we've got a pair of large knurled switches, rotary or rotating for the lights and for the wipers. And underneath all of that, we've got the optional under-dash storage tray, which is a luxury item on one of these cars, but being one of the last ones, I guess they were just chucking all the bells and whistles at it. Next to that, we've got two very important controls. We've got our heater, that's cold input, that's hot input, and that's direction. And that is our fuel cutoff. The ergonomically perfectly placed ignition switch is lurking somewhere under the steering column, and this is the column gear change, which is a joy to use as it goes. Feels much better than it should do. While we're here, let's talk about this amazing fabric. You know, I always bang on about 80s and 90s fabrics, and this is no exception. Apart from the amazing orangey colour, which is rather lovely, got this incredible pattern kind of recessed into it. I can't think of any cartoons from the 80s or 90s to refer this to for a change, but it is rather wonderful, and the seat is firmly sprung but softly padded, so it's quite comfortable, and we do even have headrests behind us, which is nice. Now, before we climb into the back, I will quickly show you this very, very rare accessory, this little padlock. This is the security for the stowage area under the back seat. So here in the back, we've actually got two stowage areas. We've got one hiding underneath the rear seat. Oops. And this is where we've got our toolkit and our original East German first aid kit, which is rather incredible to start with. Secondly, we've got our boot space, which is easily accessible under this panel behind the back seat. I do wonder if the seat folds forward as well. And of course we do have a hood which would potentially go up, but I'm not going to risk messing it up. Now let's talk briefly about this badge, the stylised fast travelling S. Now you might be wondering, why is a car called a Trabant got a badge with an S on it on the nose? And that's probably not a bad question. It's on the steering wheel as well, it's everywhere. And there is a good reason for that, because Trabant isn't actually the name of the company, it's the name of the car. This is a Trabant T601. This is the badge of HQM Sachsenring in Zwickau in Saxony, the people who made the car, but no one ever remembers. They were founded just after World War II, and they were based in the factory where they built the pre-war Auto Union racing cars. So an incredible piece of industrial heritage right there before you even begin building these things. And the name's actually derived from the racetrack, the Sachsenring, which is quite close by to where the factory was. Makes sense, really. And because there were really only a couple of East German car makers, they became a government concern after the Berlin Wall went up. So yeah, that's why we didn't see them until 1989, when the Berlin Wall came down again, when they flooded through and suddenly the S logo was everywhere. So following the fall of the wall, these started flooding into Western Europe. Say flooding, it was a bit of a trickle. And they were an interesting curio, but they've also become quite popular back home. And you might be thinking this is a symbol of the repression of the communist era, but really, because these were always like the faithful friend, the family car, the thing that got people through the bad times as a one bit of freedom, there is apparently quite a lot of nostalgia for these things, and a lot of kind of warm memories. this does have, of course, the typically, iconic is the wrong word, but you know what I mean, smoky two-stroke engine. You can hear it buzzing away at the front, and it's actually a really characterful little motor with not a bad amount of torque, considering it's only 26 horsepower. That 54 newton meters does well to drag the thing along. Now this was a pre-war DKW design that got kind of reworked into this thing, so it was doing well to be still running in 1990. But as the West started having influence in the country, they wanted to change it for a long time, but the government wouldn't allow them to update it. Like they wouldn't allow them to run the 602 and later body designs. They wouldn't let them update the engine either. So when the wall fell, they immediately went to Volkswagen and spoke to them about putting the 1.1 4-cylinder 4-stroke in, which transformed the car in terms of modernity, but perhaps not in terms of character. The thing was, though, that was not enough to rescue the model anymore. It had been around for so long at that point that really it was very much old hat and a curio, and also no matter how modern they made this, it really couldn't compete with cars that were flooding across from the other side of the wall that were 30 or 40 years newer in design. The engine uses kind of a scavenger system, which means it burns its own lubricating oil, so you have to pre-mix it to keep it all lubed up and nice. So obviously it is a smoky old thing, very much like Saab 95, 96, that ilk of car. To drive, it is an absolute hoot. You have to remember where the gear pattern goes, because it's a little bit different to other ones I've driven. It is all the way to the dashboard and down for reverse, back a little bit and down for first, up for second, to the middle and back and towards you, and down for third, and up and towards you and up for fourth. So it's really simple, and it's literally finger smooth to go in between. And the steering, obviously not power assisted, is really direct. It's not too heavy at all. It's a little heavy when you're parking, but there's not a lot of weight in this car, especially with no roof. Infinite headroom, amazing visibility. The brakes, even the brakes aren't that bad. I love the non-stop burbling jingle of the exhaust. It is so much fun. You can see why these became a bit of a cult classic after the Berlin Wall fell, because they are just so much fun. I've never driven one before, and honestly I've taken it like a duck to water. It is enormously enjoyable. I've just noticed the fuel gauge. I'm going to have to go home. Back in the early 60s, this was quite a modern looking car. Modern and sharp in design, modern in technology. Transverse mounted engine, front wheel drive. It was an exciting thing. The problem is, of course, that 30 years later, everyone else had moved on. If it had stopped in 1971 as planned, it would just be a fondly remembered classic, a nice side note in history. But because it was still soldiering on as the car of the people in 1989, it became a symbol of, well, austerity and oppression, of communist misery. The incredible thing is, as basic and Spartan as this car is, there was a 10-year waiting list for it, which is just incredible. And there was only two basic models. There was a saloon called the Limousine, and the estate called the Universal, and then finally this one, the Tramp, the open top. You could pay extra for such luxuries as an under-dash storage thing or intermittent wipers. This car, though, has an astonishing story. This is a one-owner car from new, and it came over as a batch of 10 personally imported Trabants, 7 saloons and 3 Tramps. And they're a bunch of friends, all went to the same pub not far from here. They decided it would be fun to bring some of these things into the UK. So they couldn't buy them in the UK. They'd written to the manufacturer and been told no. After the Berlin Wall fell, they wrote again and said, yes, you can import one personally. So they took the pub minibus, presumably from the local cricket team or something, drove to East Germany, collected 10 Trabants at the factory, and then drove them home, and then personally imported them. Cost about £1,800 each, apparently, in 1990. Incredible. This was a batch of 1,000 cars it came from that were destined for Hungary, and they apparently got the last 10 air-cooled two-stroke cars to come out of the factory, and they came straight here to the UK and were personally imported, which is remarkable. And this one stayed with the same owner until now and is being sold at Stone Cold. And it's only done under 10,000 miles as far as I know, and that includes a trip to Le Mans in 1991 and a trip to the Bubble Car Museum in East Germany. It's an incredible story. It's absolutely remarkable. I love it. It's the kind of bonkers that I love, and honestly, it's the stories that make the car, and that makes this car so good.